Okay, now the question arises, is this COVID-19 biologically or bioengineered virus? So the answer is, whether it's engineered or not, whether its genetical mutations were natural or forced in the laboratory, the concern is its deliberate escape. The deliberate escape of pathogens from the laboratory is something deliberate, and the fear and panic and spread attached to it is something meticulously planned years back. If you take my opinion, yes, it's created. If they have the technology? Yes, they have the technology. I can give you an example. In 1860s and 70s, when Illuminati lodges were raided by the authorities, they recovered such an equipment. The secretly communicating devices, telegraphic machines, so advanced than what were invented by Marconi later, after 6 to 7 decades later. And Bermuda Triangle and the mysteries surrounding it are all about it. Yes, they have the technology, they can, but they keep denying it. However, let's keep my opinion aside and look into the facts. Now I'll present you with some statements of medical experts and scientists from the various sources. The article is by Betsy Mackay, written on 28 September 2017. So these two articles suggest that the genetic mutations of a virus makes it more dangerous. Sometimes it could kill it, and sometimes it could be more dangerous than its previous version or previous form. And now listen to this article carefully. It's of very crucial importance, where it's from The Scientist, the magazine The Scientist. One problem leading to a lot of apprehension and speculation about the new coronavirus is that scientists don't know what the actual source of the virus was. The scientist that while it's not possible to rule out the idea of lab escape, listen carefully, while it's not possible to rule out the idea of lab escape, he believes that it is unlikely any person who works in a lab must follow very strict safety regulations. It sounds to me very extraordinary that something happened. He says, it sounds to me very extraordinary that something happened and nobody took care about such an accident. Nailed all the previous statements. It's also from the magazine The Scientist. I'm not saying this has been genetically engineered to be a bioweapon that's escaped from the lab. I'm just saying that China is collecting dangerous pathogens and they have a history of letting them escape from the lab, he says. In the final statement what we read, Mr. Mosher is suggesting that storage of pathogens as a biological weapon is a common practice. And it is not. Now, I am suggesting that it's not specific with China.
Good morning. We're here today to announce 3 separate cases highlighting the ongoing threat posed by Chinese economic espionage and research theft in the United States. First, the arrest today of a Harvard University professor for lying about his participation in a Chinese foreign recruitment program. Second, this morning we have unsealed a separate indictment of a Chinese national working as a scientific researcher at Boston University who failed to mention on her visa application that she is also a lieutenant with the People's Liberation Army. Finally, this office has indicted another Chinese national for trying to smuggle vials of biological material out of the United States to China and lying about it to federal investigators.
All the advanced nations, they do store such viruses which are potential bioweapons in their laboratories, and from there its deliberate escape, its spread, and the panic attached to it is something meticulously planned years back. But you know, when people come up with such logical reasoning, the world leaders and especially the occults, they thrash such reasoning and they counter by saying that these are conspiracy theories, these are spurious conclusions, as they have been doing in the past. I'll give you one classical example. At the time of inception of Illuminati, Adam Weishaupt, its founder, When he planned the French Revolution, he asked his subordinate Xavier Zouat to write down its details and strategies and send it to a person called Maximilien Robespierre in Paris. But subhanallah, with the will of Almighty, that postal courier was struck by lightning from the skies, and that particular book fell into the hands of Bavarian authorities. They made several hundred copies of it and sent those copies across the Europe to all the cathedrals, churches, synagogues, informing and warning them about the conspiracies, ongoing conspiracies against all European governments. But the Illuminati and Rothschild were so strong with all the news agencies at their disposal. They countered these warnings by saying that we are not the conspirators, but these are the conspiracy theories against us. A conspirator playing a victim. Similarly, after 9/11, when some reasonable people came up with an alternate narrative to the events of 9/11 and what followed it, the then American administration thrashed and damned them by saying that these are the conspiracy theories against the United States of America. However, as I said earlier, that this COVID-19 pandemic is a prelude to Malahem, the Great Wars, or Malhamatul Uzma, or Armageddon, as stated in Christian eschatology. But the question is how will this pandemic will lead to such events? Let's look at the world now. It's in an unprecedented situation after the floods of Noah. After the floods of Noah alayhi salam, we are in a unique situation where a calamity has befell the whole humanity. It never happened before in the history. A single calamity or a pandemic or an epidemic has taken the whole world into its fold. It was never seen before in the history. And there is a hadith that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, in the last portion or the last part of my ummah, there will be a lot of fitna, trials and tribulations, and every fitna, every trial will be severe than its previous one. So this is a global fitna, global trial. We haven't seen such a trial after the floods of Noah alayhi salam. And this hadith is in Sahih Muslim, Kitab al-Fitan, hadith number 4776. Now let us try to comprehend the current situation. 90% of nation states are observing a lockdown. And what's going on, what's the effect of lockdown is industrial production taking a deep plunge, international travel stopped, foreign trade stagnating, stock markets taking nosedives, both private and government sectors are taking a blow. And we should know that 60 to 70% of people in the world are daily wagers. If they don't go out to earn their livelihood, their bread and butter, what's going to happen? And if we avoid human atrocities or human death, the financial death of most individuals and third world governments is inevitable. And even advanced nations probably succumb to such crisis. So the conclusion, the bottom line is, these health crises, these COVID-19 will invite economical crisis or financial crisis all over the world, across the globe. Let's take the example of United States of America. It has become a new epicenter of this pandemic. Over 250,000 positive cases and over 7,500 deaths. That's 3 times what they suffered in 9/11 attacks. With emergency declared, businesses freeze, foreign trade almost stagnating. I'm suggesting that and according to the statements of Dr. Fauci, he says that it's far from over and he's expecting 2 to 3 more cycles. So if America suffers such a great financial and economical loss, then it's likely that the first effect is the dollar will be knocked down. Dollar will lose its value, and as it's an international tender, it will take down all the paper currencies of of the world. This is what is coming. This COVID-19, if not contained shortly, it's inviting the global economical crisis. And when that happens, dollar will be knocked down as anticipated by Sheikh Imran Hussain. It's likely to happen in few months or less than a year. And probably this will be the demise of United States as a superpower. Of course, it will survive the crisis, but it will be its demise as a superpower. The seat of the superpower will be vacant. So this economical collapse will incite chaos and anarchy in the whole world, while most of the governments trying to grip the situation. Those who are aspiring to rule the world from Jerusalem will be flexing their muscles. They'll deem this to be the ideal time to take up to the office of superpower and fill that vacant seat of superpower and establish the kingdom of David and Solomon and resurrect their third temple and expand their territories. But they have a monumental hazard in doing so. And that hazard is Muslims' most holiest site, or their third holiest site is standing tall at their holiest sites. That's Masjid al-Aqsa and Tomb of Rock. This is the mother of all conflicts. This is the root of the conflicts. The claim to the Jerusalem, the claim of Jerusalem. Christians claim that that's their holy land. Jews claim that that's their promised land. And we Muslims claim that that's our third holiest site. And that was in our possession since the Caliphate of Umar radiallahu anh in the 7th century AD till the Balfour Declaration in 1917, that's 20th century, except that brief period from 1099 AD to 1188 AD when it fell in the hands of Crusaders. But the rest of the time it was in the possession of Muslims. So they will not let it go. They will not let it loose. They will fight till end to protect their holiest side or their first direction of their worship. So the bottom line is an attempt to demolish Masjid al-Aqsa and resurrecting their third temple, or the ongoing financial crisis at that time would trigger the Third World War. And of course there was a third narrative, that an attempt to denuclearize Iran and Pakistan could trigger the Third World War. But that possibility can be overruled in the present circumstances. So now, what are our individual and collective obligations in the wake of these trials and tribulations? What as an individual, we should try to accomplish or try to do, and as a community, what are our obligations? So first we'll start with individual obligations. Obligation number 1. As it's plain as daylight that after COVID-19, the world is not going to be same, and this crisis will invite the other more serious and grave crisis, and that's likely to be economical or financial crisis worldwide. So, and it's likely that the dollar will be knocked down, and it will knock down all the paper currencies in the world. So what should we do? First and foremost thing we should do is to convert our cash, gold or silver or any other precious metals that has value, or into the stock which has shelf value, like wheat or rice or salt or dates, so that you can store them, pile them up to live out these trials and tribulations. Obligation number 2. To produce our own veggies, our own vegetables, either in your backyards, or it can also be done on the rooftops, in your balconies. Try to produce your veggies and try to stock essential commodities like wheat or wheat flour or rice, as there will be scarcity of food in the wake of wars or in the wake of financial crisis. Point number 3. Cutting down the expenditure and extravagance. As to save the resources, we have to cut down our expenditure and limitize ourselves to the daily commodities and essentials, the vitals. Point number 4, stop watching mainstream media. Don't believe in mainstream media. Switch to the private media or select your source of information wisely. As Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, at the end times, or at the time in the times of trials and tribulations, the reality and the appearance will be two opposites, poles apart. These two additional points, point number 5 and 6, are specially for Muslims. Try to recite this supplication after every fard salah. Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min fitnatil mahyaya wal mamat, wa min fitnatil qabr, wa min fitnatil nar, wa min fitnatil masih dajjal. This is a sound hadith reported by Imam Bukhari. O Allah, I seek refuge from the trials of those who are dead and alive, from the trials of the grave, from the trials of the fire, and from the trials of Masih Dajjal, the impostor. And number 6, read Suratul Kahf. Make a habit of reading Suratul Kahf on every Friday and try to memorize the first 10 verses of Suratul Kahf. As Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, it's a protection against Dajjal. Now coming to collective obligations as a community or ummah. There are many obligations, but if I'll just mention one obligation, and probably in the next lectures or in the next episodes, we'll discuss about the later obligation. But the first and the foremost obligation as an ummah, as a community, is to free ourselves from sectarian divisions and all sorts of divisive ideologies. And it's the high time now that we wave off all the religious differences between masalik and madahib, and we shall come back to Quran and Sunnah. Let's come back to Quran and Sunnah. And there is not a single issue that cannot be solved or resolved by Quran and Sunnah. And our salvation during the trials, during the fitan, is in unity. And our unity in the future is inevitable. As we read and analyze the ahadith pertaining to Imam Mahdi and Isa alayhi salam, we find that this ummah will again be like a coalesced whole, and all the grudges and animosity will be lifted from our hearts. So this is our future. So why not we start walking towards our destiny? And it's a wisdom to start walking towards the destiny. And this ummah will once again unite under the leadership of Imam al-Mahdi. So that's our destiny, and wisdom is in walking in that direction. So this is the first and foremost obligation that we need to sit together, think about it, and lay out a formula or a plan to unite all the masalik and madahib and this divisions among the ummah. And we sincerely pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that may Allah unite this ummah once again as a coalesced whole, as a one whole, and lift and remove and eradicate all the sectarian divisions and all sorts of divisive ideologies, and make this ummah as a one ummah, one nation. Wa akhiru da'wan alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.